I'd like to thank the sponsors, the members of Sri Narayana Association of Toronto, and the Just Talk Collective for giving us all this opportunity for this day of sharing. Even though I have come from the other side of the continent, from Bainbridge Island near Seattle, we have already been linked in our aspirations. For in 1981, I founded Island Gurukula Aranya, a Gurukula, an ashram, dedicated to living and teaching Narayana Guru's compassionate wisdom, along with that of other luminous lovers of life. From there, I also published the English Gurukulam magazine on behalf of the worldwide Narayana Gurukula and East-West University of Brahma Vidya. As human beings living together on our beloved planet Earth, we have the chance to share our sorrows, our fears, our joys and hopes, and the ways in which we can support one another in bearing our sorrows, facing our fears, celebrating our joys, and nurturing our hopes. Today, that takes the particular form of sharing our understanding of the challenges, as well as the visions, the resources, and the practices that enable us to be both effective and expansive in actualizing social justice. Earlier this month, an unequivocal and powerful warning was delivered to all citizens of planet Earth that we are collectively facing a severe climate emergency with the imminent potential to become globally catastrophic to ecosystems, economies, and societies. Even though the thousands of scientists who delivered the warning correctly identified it as a climate emergency, it is so far-reaching that it is also intrinsically a social justice emergency. Sadly, those most responsible for the damage are those most deaf to the warning and the need for action, while the impacts disproportionately undermine the well-being of the most vulnerable in society, country by country and globally. This is looming social injustice on a scale never before experienced by humanity. That is particularly made clear by the primary recommendations for action made by the scientists, which focus on our shared pressing needs. The need to move away from unsustainable ideas of ever-increasing economic and resource consumption, away from defining well-being in terms of having and selling more material goods, the need to increase energy efficiency and conservation and replace fossil fuel use with cleaner energy sources, away from the destruction of air, land, and water, the basic constituents of life, the need to reduce emissions of short-lived pollutants like methane and soot, the need to protect and restore Earth's ecosystems, the need to eat mostly plant-based foods, to feed exponentially more people, the need to achieve full gender equity, including primary and secondary education as a global norm for all, especially girls and young women. Even though Narayana Guru lived a long time ago, 1854 to 1928, quite distant from here, his life example, impact, and wisdom teachings are profoundly relevant to the challenges we face today. I'd like to share with you a little bit about my life to explain how I have come to that conviction. I graduated from college in 1969. Although blessed with much personal good fortune, I was weighed down by the terror-filled history of the Holocaust in Europe, the ever-present threat of nuclear war, and by my growing awareness of the many injustices that permeated the history of the Americas, from the time of early European contact to the present. The price being paid as a result of the new religions of technology and consumerism, although muted compared to today's manifestations, was already showing up then as many social and environmental casualties. My growing awareness of not only the discrimination I faced, but the many forms of violence against women enacted through history and around the world made me tremble. Added to all this was the belligerent attitude of the U.S. government, leading to wars and other forms of destruction. The failures of legal, educational, economic, and governmental institutions to face and redress these injustices, and the resulting human suffering worldwide wrenched my heart. Along with many others, I sought to create change through activism, letters and petitions, and civil disobedience in the form of nonviolent protests and demonstrations. But in our ignorance, the emphasis on us and them grew ever more extreme in the process, undermining our effectiveness and seriously impacting my personal, physical, emotional, and spiritual health, resulting in the inner challenges of hopelessness, a sense of inadequacy, of being overwhelmed, of feeling lost. Then, through a college friend, a fellow activist, I came to meet Guru Nitya Chaitanya Yati when he visited San Francisco in 1973. One day I was invited to come along to hear a talk he was giving to a group at a friend's house. During the talk, Guru began to speak about the universal self that is also the most intimate core self of each of us. He said, "Inexhaustible qualities of consciousness can be experienced as I in me and as I in you. It is the same cosmic I, the word, the logos, that is expressed as the boundless universe, boundless both in time and space. The transient I has the same substance as the eternal self." This was like a bell ringing within me as I resonated with what he described. There is a unitive reality of consciousness in which we all have our being. Finally, here was someone saying what I had always sensed to be true. I understood that the vision I had glimpsed could offer a framework and a ground for how to be loving and peaceful energy in the world and within oneself. I wanted to know more. For the next several years, I oriented my life around Guru Nitya's teaching visits to the U.S. I increasingly traveled, lived, and studied with him whenever he was in the country. Guru Nitya vividly helped us to see the links between wisdom teaching, and the creation of beauty and harmony in our own lives and in the world. His sharing took many forms, from his teaching in universities such as Portland State and Stanford, to his public lectures, private instruction, and copious books and articles that spoke to both the current and the perennial needs of human beings to live in harmony with one another and the natural world. He spread before all of us a vision of the vast panorama of the cultural, philosophical, and spiritual heritage of all humanity. At the same time, it was clear that the philosophical vision and life example of Narayana Guru was central. When I first traveled to India with Guru Nitya in 1979, he asked me to write a paper and present it at the annual convention of Narayana Gurukula in Varkala, Kerala. He suggested the title and topic, What Narayana Guru is Not. I started reading Narayana Guru's poems translated into English, interviewing people, and hearing many stories about him. I found the Guru's example intriguing and inspiring, especially as I learned about how Kerala society and countless individuals within it had been transformed. Then Guru Nitya made the suggestion that I write a full-fledged biography of Narayana Guru. As I undertook the necessary research, the history and traditions of India, particularly Kerala, gradually unfolded before me, revealing both treasures and curses. Worst of the curses was that of the centuries-old caste system, with its dehumanizing effects on oppressed and oppressor alike. And most precious of the treasures are the spiritual and philosophical insights that are capable of leading us out of the trap of constricted identity to expansive identity with the universal self of all. In Narayana Guru's case, he first established himself in the core of wisdom, then had a powerful effect in ever-widening circles, eventually transforming the whole social fabric. He became a beacon of radiating light for millions of people. Although the world has undergone extensive changes since the time of Narayana Guru, we face the same essential challenges. The human family is subject to many forms of oppression and injustice, racial bigotry and genocide, religious intolerance, the aggression of strong against weak, and the threat of ignorance and disease overpowering knowledge and health. And now we collectively face the degradation of our planetary home and the possibility of human extinction after untold suffering. Whether we ourselves are struggling, or we're reaching out a hand to our sisters and brothers, we hope our efforts will be successful and enduring. One significant key to Narayana Guru's impact lies in how his life and teachings respond to a need beautifully articulated by Angel Kyodo Williams, founder of the national social justice organization, Transformative Change. She said, "We cannot have a healed society. We cannot have change. We cannot have justice if we do not reclaim and repair the human spirit, if we don't do inner work, to do our work, to come into deep knowing of who we are. That's the stuff that bringing down systems of oppression is made of. That inner work of reclaiming the human spirit involves reclaiming the sense of humanity of the people that are the current vehicles for those very forms of oppression. We have to allow for the incompleteness of any of our truths and a real forgiveness for the complexity of human beings. Whatever path of action we choose, we need to start with ourselves. We need to educate ourselves so that we do not knowingly or inadvertently perpetuate the same evils we wish to change or generate new ones. Our individual selves are limited by our personal history, our likes and dislikes, our education, our loyalties, and our psychological and physical makeup. Thus, our understanding of the unbounded self, which we truly are, is often dim, and our attempts to experience and share happiness are often misguided. The goal of seeking happiness is one, but the means chosen may bristle with contradiction. It is here that I'd like to share just a few of the insights I gained about how Narayana Guru's compassionate and potent example offers us constructive guidance to enhance our efforts. First, a little history. In India, over millennia, the songs that had risen from human beings at the dawn of history to praise and ask blessings of the divine had transformed into an intricate socio-religious framework. The Vedic songs were subjected to elaborate commentaries, which froze devotion into detailed rituals. The members of the priestly class reserved for themselves the central and lucrative functions of religious life, such as temple installations and performance of rituals. Throughout India, but perhaps particularly in Kerala, the temples were citadels of casteism, with one's position in society reflected by one's privileges of approaching and entering the various gates and courtyards. The government enforced taxes on all people for support and maintenance of the priests and the temples, but the most downtrodden were not even allowed to walk on the roads in front of the temples, much less to enter. Such prohibitions were enforced with cruel and extreme punishments. It was in this context that Narayana Guru took the step of founding a temple. The Guru recognized the need of all human beings to relate themselves to the wholesomeness of truth and beauty, and to tune themselves to the peace that passeth understanding. Though his founding of the temple was not in the nature of a reform, its effect was radical. It shook the entire edifice of oppression and injustice. Those who had been suffering saw the shaking and were encouraged. Requests for the Guru's presence and for further temple installations poured in from towns and villages all over South India. The Guru honored the sincere wishes of the people to live more in the light by urging the abandonment of outmoded rituals, cleaning up decaying temples, establishing new ones. But he gradually sought to lift understanding from focus on a deity to focus on the universal. Sometimes he installed an oil lamp or a mirror instead of an icon. After starting many temples, he said, "You have had enough of these temples. God may be worshipped anywhere. The idols are not essential. It is the ideals which matter. Worship the ideals. Put up the mottos of truth, love, and duty in your temples and practice these virtues in your lives. God is in us. We must put up temples in our hearts and worship God within us. That is the real worship. All others are substitutes. He expanded this vision in his philosophical poem of unitive wisdom, Atmopadesha Satakam, 100 verses of self-instruction, where he stated explicitly, all beings are making effort in every way, all the time, for the happiness of the self. In the world, this is the one faith. These words shine as the brilliant core of Narayana Guru's experience and teaching in human affairs. Whatever organizations, beliefs, practices, creeds, or philosophical tenets human beings adopt and adhere to, and indeed, whatever actions we undertake, the underlying motivation is to achieve the happiness of the universal self. That which is beyond name and form is seen in many images and called by many names. Still, that numinous unknown shines eternally as the very basis of the existence of the person who seeks or acts, and as the inner value of what is sought. In Narayana Guru, we find the example of one in whom the happiness of the self was like a constant bubbling spring. He could see the thread on which are strung all efforts to gain happiness, religious or otherwise, undertaken by human beings. All contest and conflict are dissolved in his penetrating vision of that as the one faith and the one goal. In the same work, he also said, the happiness of another, that is my happiness. One's own joy is another's joy. This is the guiding principle. That action, which is good for one person, should bring happiness to another. For the sake of another, day and night performing action, having given up self-centered interests, the compassionate person acts. The self-centered man is wholly immersed in necessity, performing unsuccessful actions for himself alone. That man, this man, thus all that is known in this world, if contemplated, is the being of the one primordial self. What each performs for the happiness of the self should be conducive to the happiness of another. Here, when the Guru mentions contemplation, he is encouraging us to take responsibility for our own actions and for our own thoughts. He does not offer us cookbook kinds of answers telling us the steps we need to take. But in these verses, he makes it clear that contemplation includes the process of expanding our eco-boundary beyond the constraints of family or religion or country or language. Then compassion is not something one gives to another, but a natural state of being in which all are one, with love vast enough to include oppressor as well as oppressed. In his critique of caste, his words reflect his powerful example of relating to all humans as being one kind, and he extended this without limit. even to those who supported and benefited from the caste hierarchy. He did not relate to them with anger or contempt. Instead, he treated them with compassion also, such as when a Sanskrit scholar came to engage in dialogue with him and was so impressed by the Guru's wisdom and selfless behavior that he prostrated before Narayana Guru and said, "Please accept me, you are my Guru." But he refused to take ashram food, knowing it had been prepared by so-called lower caste people. The Gurus and disciples and followers became very angry. They said, "How can you come here and accept Narayana Guru as your Guru and still hang on to your caste prejudices?" But Narayana Guru gently said, "He's already punishing himself. You don't have to punish him further." And he asked that a fresh coconut and a banana he brought for the visitor to eat. This is a simple example, but it illustrates how he approached his fellow beings. Just as he established temples open to all, instead of railing against those responsible for the temple setup, Narayana Guru also started schools teaching Sanskrit to all, refusing to abide by long-standing traditions and prohibitions. Once a government minister visited the ashram. He arrogantly claimed to be able to tell the caste of any person as proof of caste's inherent truth. Guru asked that a number of the young boys who were ashram inmates be called. They all chanted Sanskrit verses. Then the minister made a number of declarations regarding the supposed hereditary background of the boys. But he was so abysmally wrong that he soon had to rescind his argument. Again and again, the Guru's message came home in ways just as simple, gentle, and irrefutable. In addition to the importance of education in one's own grassroots, the Guru stressed the value of education that would prepare one to participate in and contribute to the modern world. He supported education for girls as well as boys, started many English schools, and started night schools for fishermen and field workers. These initiatives came to fruition in a whole generation of newly awakened minds, which flooded and transformed the fields of education, literature, business, and government in Kerala and beyond. Although his example inspired a whole movement that reformed many injustices in the social fabric of Kerala, the Guru himself was not a social reformer or a revolutionary. One has to see society to try to reform it. One has to see an oppressor to revolt. But Narayana Guru saw only facets of the one light, obscured by varying degrees of darkness and ignorance. This is the difference between one who acts with the intent to reform the practices of society or individuals, which inevitably sets up dichotomies of good and bad, right and wrong, and one such as Narayana Guru, whose universal compassion in itself transformed the tradition-bound or ignorant ways of seeing and doing in those around him. For almost 40 years, I have been teaching classes based on Narayana Guru's wisdom teachings, guided by Guru Nitya's commentaries, which link those teachings to both the world's universal wisdom treasures and our here and now. Starting around 20 years ago, the internet has made it possible for my classes to expand to students around the world. through email-based study groups with dedicated participants in Europe, UK, India, and all over the US. I have had the privilege of witnessing the inspiring, life-changing effects of the Guru's teachings in person after person, regardless of their country, their culture, their religious background, their field of endeavor, or lifestyle. His words and example can help us grow in our understanding and our capacity to act skillfully and compassionately to promote human well-being. It is also important to keep in mind the universal nature of Narayana Guru's vision. In his scriptures of mercy, he does not draw attention to himself or suggest that he is unique, but rather extols the transformative power of contemplation on grace, love, and mercy, as manifested by all luminous lovers of life, such as the Buddha, Jesus, the Prophet, Krishna, Vyasa, and other sages. He also points to the virtue of being guided by that which makes life possible, using two beautiful images of the sustenance our Earth Mother blesses us with: the sacred, wish-fulfilling cow, Kamatenu, and the tree of life, Deva Taru. He concludes by mentioning the precious meaning of ancient scriptures, what is taught by a guru and conveyed by a sage, and many branches of wisdom, and then stressing that they all belong together as one in essence. I'll leave you with the central words of that work. Grace yields blessedness. A heart love empty, disaster spells of every kind. Darkness, as love's effacer and as suffering's core, is seed to everything. Grace, love, mercy, all the three stand for one same reality, life's star. What the Guru wants us to fully know is that one who loves is one who really lives. Thank you.